Sierra's Pa Vav. The night of the Luna ceremony was the kind that made even the mountains hold their breath. Moonlight spilled like fire over the courtyard, turning stone and steel into something holy. Every torch flickered in rhythm with the wind. Every banner of the Moonbane Pack rippled under the blue sky. The air hummed with anticipation, with the scent of wolves and something divine. And somewhere in the middle of it all stood me. My name's Sierra. The kennel girl. The lowest omega in Moonbane. I tugged at the hem of the borrowed gown that hung off my back. It was too big, a hand-me-down from one of the beta's daughters, yellowed lace, uneven sewing. I'd spent the afternoon scrubbing mud from it just to look halfway decent. It didn't matter. No amount of scrubbing or praying could hide the truth of what I was. Still, I stood there among the pack, heart hammering, trying not to fidget, trying not to let my nerves show. Every year, the ceremony was the same. The priestess would call forth the unmated wolves, the moon goddess would reveal her will, and some lucky she-wolf would walk away chosen by fate. Usually the mates were betas or warriors, never an omega. But the rules said every unmated wolf must attend. So here I was, a shadow among beauty. It wasn't hard. People didn't see omegas unless they wanted work done. I kept to the back, watching as the Alpha stood at the front of the courtyard. Isaak. Our Alpha. Even from a distance, I could feel the pull of his presence, the commanding power that came with his bloodline. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a dark ceremonial cloak that caught the light like storm clouds. His hair gleamed black under the moonlight, and his eyes, his eyes, were gray like winter rain, cold and sharp like his chiseled jawline. He was the most handsome man I'd ever seen, and every she-wolf in the crowd watched him like he was the moon itself. He was perfect. And he was everything I was not. I'd seen him up close only a few times, passing through the training yard or leading a patrol. I'd never spoken to him. I'd never dared. If he'd noticed me at all, it was only because I was a pest in his way. Still, a part of me, some foolish, naive part, had always wondered what it might feel like to be noticed. But the priestess's voice rose, cutting through the night. On this sacred night, under the gaze of the moon goddess, we call upon her to reveal the bond of fated souls. The crowd fell silent. The priestess lifted a bowl of shimmering water, glowing faintly with moonlight, and dipped her fingers into it. One by one, she called the names of the unmated women, marking their foreheads with a touch of silver. Each time, a faint ripple of power moved through the air. Some women glowed faintly, their destined mates stepping forward with tears and smiles. Others didn't, and returned to their places with polite disappointment. And then, Sierra of Moonbane. My name, I froze because definitely I'd heard wrong. The priestess looked around. Sierra? The crowd turned with her. Dozens of eyes found me, eyes filled with curiosity and disdain at a lowly omega like me. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to melt into the shadows and pretend I'd never existed. But the priestess's gaze softened. The goddess calls all, she said gently. My legs moved. Each step felt heavier than the last as I walked forward through the parted crowd. When I reached the altar, I knelt. The marble was cold beneath my knees. I kept my head bowed. The priestess dipped her fingers again into the moonlit water and touched them to my forehead. For a moment, nothing happened. Then everything did. Light, pure, silver, blinding, flared around me. It rushed through my chest, my veins, my very soul. My breath caught, and a strange, wild warmth spread through me. My wolf stirred, howling in recognition. Then I felt it. The pull. My head jerked up, and my eyes locked onto him. Alpha Isaak. The light between us pulsed, forming a shimmering bond of silver flame that everyone could see. Gasps rippled through the courtyard. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I could feel was the bond, his scent wrapping around me like a storm, his heartbeat echoing in my chest, our wolves wanting to claim each other. It was intoxicating. I saw the moment he felt it too. His eyes widened for a heartbeat, his body going rigid as the light flickered across his chest. And then his expression changed. Shock turned to fury. His jaw clenched, his eyes darkened, and his entire aura shifted. The whispers died instantly. The air itself seemed to freeze. He took a slow step toward me. My voice barely made it out. Alpha. His eyes cut into me. No. It was a single word that cracked through the courtyard like thunder. I blinked, trembling. The goddess. I don't care what the goddess says. His tone was icy, controlled. This cannot be. The priestess gasped. Alpha Isaak, you cannot reject her will. His gaze never left mine. I can, and I will. Each word hit like a gut punch. I felt the crowd's shock ripple through the air, the collective horror of what he was about to do. But I couldn't move. Kieran stepped closer until his shadow fell over me, his authority rolling off him. You are not meant for me, he said, his voice low, harsh. You are an Omega, weak, fragile. You would break under the weight of this pack, and I will not let the moon's mistake destroy what I've built. Something inside me cracked. Please, I whispered, barely audible. Don't. His jaw tightened. I, Isaak of the Moonbane Pack, reject you, Sierra, as my mate and Luna. My eyes watered. A small whimper tore from my throat as the bond snapped. I fell forward, clutching my heart. The pain wasn't physical. It was soul deep, ripping something sacred from me. The light between us shattered into fragments of silver that scattered across the stones and faded. The crowd gasped, but no one moved. Isaac's voice came again, distant, cold. Let this ceremony continue. The goddess has made her choice, but I make mine. Then he turned away. Just like that, the man the goddess herself had chosen for me walked back to the altar without looking back. Sierra's Pav. The morning after the Luna ceremony was cold. The pack grounds, usually alive with the chatter of warriors and the scent of breakfast drifting from the kitchens, felt wrong. Quiet in a way that wasn't peaceful but mocking. I could still feel the echo of it, the pain that had torn through me last night when Alpha Isaak rejected the bond. It hadn't faded, not really. It pulsed beneath my ribs like a bruise that would never heal. My wolf hadn't stirred since. She was curled somewhere deep inside me, silent, trembling. I wanted to hide. But Omegas didn't get to hide. My duty was to clean the courtyard after the ceremony, just like every morning after a festival. So I walked there barefoot, the hem of my ruined gown dragging through the mud, the same gown I'd worn when the moon goddess had dared to mark me as his. The memory hit like a blade. The sound of his voice, the cold look in his eyes, the gasps, the whispers, the silence that followed when the bond snapped. It hadn't been a nightmare. The entire pack had seen it happen. By sunrise, every wolf from the eastern border to the mountain outpost would know that their alpha had rejected the goddess's choice, and that the rejected one was me, the low-born Omega. The shame of it burned hotter than the pain in my chest. As I bent to gather the discarded garlands, I heard laughter behind me. Bethelina, the alpha's rumored lover. I didn't have to turn around to recognize her. Her sweet and sharp scent was everywhere. She'd been at Isaac's side since before his father's death. Everyone knew what she was to him. She was his equal in every way that mattered to the pack. I straightened slowly. She stood at the far end of the courtyard, surrounded by a cluster of she-wolves and warriors, her golden hair gleaming in the weak sunlight. She wore a gown of pale blue silk that hugged her perfect curves, her smile sharp as her claws. When her gaze found me, that smile widened. Well, if it isn't our blessed Luna, she purred, loud enough for everyone to hear, cleaning up after her own ceremony. The laughter that followed was cruel, bright. My stomach turned. I kept my eyes on the ground, clutching the wilted garlands tighter. Bethelina, I murmured, hoping she'd lose interest. Oh, don't look so frightened, she said, taking a graceful step forward. I only wanted to thank you for the entertainment. Last night was unforgettable. A ripple of amusement moved through her little crowd. She actually thought the goddess chose her, one of the warriors snickered. I heard she fainted, another added. Pitiful thing. My face burned. I forced myself to keep breathing, to stay silent. Omegas knew better than to talk back to their betters. But Bethelina wasn't satisfied. She circled me like a cat toying with prey. Tell me, Sierra, she said softly, what did it feel like? Thinking, even for a heartbeat, that you could be Luna? I clenched my jaw. What did it feel like, she pressed, when he looked at you and chose me instead? The words struck like claws. Laughter exploded again, sharper this time. My heart pounded in my chest and I tasted salt on my tongue. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream, but the rules of the pack chained me to stillness. I began, but the sound stopped in my throat. Speak up, kennel girl, one of the warriors jeered. Maybe she's still waiting for the alpha to change his mind, another said. Bethelina laughed. Oh, he won't. Isaak knows what he wants. He always has. She tilted her head, feigning pity. You poor thing. Did you really think the moon's mistake could make you his equal? Something inside me twisted. I could take cruelty. I'd lived with it all my life. But hearing his name on her lips, said with such possessive pride, it broke something. I met her gaze, my voice trembling but clear. You speak boldly for someone who fears the goddess's will. The courtyard went silent. For a heartbeat, I thought maybe I'd imagined her furious expression. Then she smiled again, all teeth. You think you can use the goddess to shield you? She turned to the others. She doesn't even realize what she's done to him. Do you? She looked back at me, eyes glittering. You cursed him. The moment you were revealed, you humiliated him before the entire pack. You made him look weak, and now he has to live with that shame. Because of you. Gasps, whispers. Someone murmured. The goddess wouldn't curse the Alpha, but I could see in their faces that they believed her. Bethelina stepped closer until her perfume made me nauseous. Her voice dropped. You should leave, Omega, before he decides to make your punishment public. I swallowed hard. I have nowhere else to go. She tilted her head. Then maybe you should crawl back to whatever hole you came from and pray the goddess doesn't strike you down for your arrogance. Her words were met with laughter again. And that was when my wolf finally stirred, whimpering inside me. The rejection had torn her apart, but hearing them mock us broke what was left. I bit my lip hard, trying to anchor myself, but the connection was slipping. My vision blurred, the edges of the world going weg. The pain surged through me again. Someone laughed louder. Look, she's crying! My knees buckled, the garland spilling from my hands as I hit the ground. The pain tore through my chest again, sharper than before. My wolf howled and then went silent. It was like something inside me had died all over again. Bethelina's laughter faltered. Oh, someone muttered, she's collapsing. I couldn't hear them anymore, just the sound of my heartbeat slowing, the cold creeping through my limbs. Through the blur, I saw movement at the far edge of the courtyard. Isaak. He stood there in his dark cloak, expression unreadable, surrounded by two of his guards. Our eyes met for the briefest moment. For a heartbeat, something flickered behind his cold mask. I felt his wolf stir. I felt it, even through the pain, an echo of a growl deep within him that called to what was left of mine. He wanted to come to me. I knew it. Every instinct in him screamed too. But then his jaw tightened. He turned his face away. Isaak, Bethelina started, her voice suddenly uncertain. Enough, he said, his tone flat. All of you. The courtyard fell silent. Even the laughter died. He looked at me once more, just a glance, and then said, without emotion, get her out of my sight. Sierra's pav. I couldn't bear it anymore. The humiliation, the disdain, the mockery, the rejection. So I packed what I could, and by the time the first pale light crept over the ridge, I was already walking. The pack lands stretched behind me, gray roofs, the faint glint of the training grounds, smoke rising from early morning fires. From here, they looked almost peaceful. But I knew better. Beneath that quiet was a hunger, a cruelty that thrived on weakness. And after last night, after him, I was the weakest thing alive. The grass was still damp beneath my bare feet. I didn't care. Each step away from the pack house felt like breathing again, like maybe I could scrape off the shame clinging to my skin. But shame doesn't wash off. It burns. It burns hotter than tears. Every whisper, every laugh from the night before echoed in my head. Bethelina's voice, sweet and venomous, still slithered through my thoughts. Did you really think the moon's mistake could make you his equal? I clenched my fists until my nails bit into my palms. The moon's mistake. That was what they were calling me now. The cursed Omega. The rejected mate, the one who dared to stand beneath the goddess's light and make their Alpha look weak. They didn't know the truth, that I hadn't wanted any of this. I hadn't wanted to be chosen. I hadn't wanted him. Or maybe I had. Maybe a small, foolish part of me had wanted it so badly that the moon herself had heard me. Now I wished she hadn't. A cold wind swept through the trees, lifting my hair, and I stopped at the edge of the forest. Beyond this point was the border, the invisible line that marked the end of Moonbane territory. Past it was wilderness and danger, rogues and loners. Crossing it without permission was exile. But the thought didn't scare me. What scared me was staying. I took another step, my breath coming out in clouds. My wolf was still silent inside me, no comfort, no warmth, just emptiness. The rejection had torn her apart, and the silence she left behind was louder than any scream. Still, sometimes in that silence, I thought I heard her whimper. "Sierra, don't." I stopped. The tug hit me then, faint at first like a thread pulling at the edge of my soul, then stronger, sharp, insistent. The bond, even shattered, it was still there, a ghost connection, something the rejection couldn't completely kill. It thrummed low in my chest, pulling me back toward the heart of the pack, toward him. I gritted my teeth. No. But the pull didn't care. It came again, a pulse that wasn't mine. Anger. Restlessness. The pacing of a caged animal. Him. I could feel him. Alpha Isaak. The moment I realized it, my knees almost buckled. The sensation was faint but unmistakable, his emotions brushing against mine like sparks off stone. Rage, tightly leashed. Frustration, guilt buried under fury. I pressed a trembling hand to my chest. "Stop it," I whispered. "You rejected me. You don't get to feel me anymore." But my body didn't listen. The mark over my heart, once glowing silver, flared dully, throbbing with every beat. Through that connection, I saw flashes, shadows, his pacing steps across the Alpha's quarters, the tension in his shoulders, the scent of smoke and steel. He was angry, not just at me, at himself. And still, despite everything, my heart ached for him. That was the cruelest part. Even in rejection, my soul still sought his. The bond that should have died still reached for him, like a root refusing to stop growing through stone. Every time I tried to push him away, my chest burned in protest. I pressed my forehead to a tree and squeezed my eyes shut. "Please, let me go." For a moment, it felt like the forest was listening. The morning breeze whispered through the leaves, soft and distant, carrying the faint scent of pine and moonflower. Then the pull came again, sharper, angrier. My breath hitched as his emotions hit harder. His wolf was restless, prowling beneath his skin. I could feel the growl building in his chest, could almost hear it. He was fighting it, fighting us. And God's help me. Some part of me wanted to reach for him, to soothe him, to tell him I understood, that I didn't want this bond any more than he did. But I couldn't. I wouldn't. I stumbled backward, my back hitting the tree trunk. "You rejected me," I whispered through clenched teeth. "You don't get to feel me. You don't get to own me." The tug only tightened. Pain spiked through my ribs, sharp and bright, as if the bond itself was punishing me for resisting. I gasped, sliding down to my knees. A growl. His growl echoed faintly in my mind, low and furious. My body trembled in response, instinctive submission rising before I crushed it down. "No," I breathed, voice shaking. "I won't bow to you. Not anymore." The connection flared hot, then went silent. I sagged against the tree, heart pounding. The pain lingered, but the pull faded, retreating like a tide. The sudden emptiness made me dizzy. I realized I was crying only when the tears hit the dirt. I didn't know how long I stayed there, minutes, maybe hours, just breathing, just trying to remember how to exist without him inside my head. When I finally stood again, the sun had begun to rise over the mountains, painting the sky in pale gold. The world looked beautiful, and it hurt, because beauty shouldn't exist in a world that could break you so completely. I started walking again, this time slower. The edge of the territory was near, a shallow stream marking the border, its surface glinting like liquid glass. Crossing it meant no pack, no protection, no future. But staying meant humiliation, pity, the constant reminder of his rejection. My choice should have been easy. But the bond wouldn't let me move. Every step closer to the border made the mark on my chest burn hotter, sharper, as if it were warning me. "You can leave the pack, but you can't leave him." I laughed then, a bitter, broken sound. "So that's my curse, isn't it?" The wind answered with silence. I sank down beside the stream, drawing my knees to my chest. My reflection stared back, pale skin, hollow eyes, the faint shimmer of the bond's remnants like silver dust across my collarbone. I looked like a ghost. No worse. I looked like a wolf who'd lost her soul. I dipped my fingers into the water, watching ripples distort my face. "The goddess chose me," I whispered, and he called it a mistake. The words tasted like ashes. I wanted to scream at the sky, to demand why she had done this. Why me? Why him? Why gift me a bond that only brought pain? But the moon was silent. She always was. Behind me, I heard the sound of distant footsteps racing towards me. "Alpha Isaak," I said, my voice trembling as he emerged from the darkness. Sierra's pav, Even in the darkness, he looked carved from something untouchable, broad shoulders tense, jaw hard, silver eyes gleaming like a blade in the stormlight. His presence burned through the night like fire through frost. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The distance between us felt alive, thrumming with power and something darker. Then he broke it. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" His voice cut through with fury barely held in check. My throat went dry. "Leaving." He took a step forward. "You think you can just walk out of my territory?" "I'm not yours to command," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "You made that very clear last night." The words hung there, sharp as claws. His jaw tightened. Lightning cracked overhead, followed by a small drizzle. For an instant, his eyes looked almost feral, his wolf pushing just beneath the surface. "You don't get to play the victim here, Omega," he said, his tone hard but his gaze flickering. "You think running away will fix this? That it'll make me accept you?" I laughed, a sound more brittle than amused. "I don't expect you to." His eyes darkened. "Watch your tongue." "No." My voice rose, raw and unrestrained. "You don't get to silence me anymore. You rejected me in front of the entire pack, called me unworthy, and now you follow me here to what? Remind me of my place?" He flinched. Enough for me to see the crack behind the mask, but then his face hardened again. "You are a curse," he said coldly. "A trick from the goddess meant to humiliate me. She put you in my path to test me, and I won't fall for her cruelty." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The rain seemed to stop around us, the world narrowing to his voice. A curse. That was what he saw when he looked at me. Not a woman, not a mate, just a punishment. My chest burned, that invisible thread between us flaring with pain. I took a step toward him, my voice shaking. "You think so little of her? Of fate?" He bared his teeth, his control splintering. "Don't speak of fate. Don't speak of things you don't understand." "I understand more than you ever will," I shot back. "You think the moon would bind us for nothing? You think she made a mistake just because your pride can't bear the thought of an Omega being your equal?" His nostrils flared. "You think you're my equal?" "I think I was meant to be," I shouted, the words ripping out of me before I could stop them. "But you're too blind to see it. Too proud, too scared of what it means that the goddess didn't choose some perfect Luna with alpha blood but me." He growled, the sound vibrating through the air. His wolf was close now. I could feel it. "You don't know what it means to bear my mark," he said, stepping closer. The rain beaded on his skin, his breath hot against the cold night air. "You don't know what it means to carry the weight of a pack, the burden of blood. You wouldn't survive a day in my place. You would have made sure if that, wouldn't you?" I whispered, meeting his gaze. The words landed like a strike. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. The only sound was the storm, wind tearing through the trees, thunder rolling like the heartbeat of something ancient. And beneath it all, the bond hummed. It pulsed between us. Every emotion he tried to bury, anger, guilt, desire, bled through. It hurt. Gods, it hurt. Because even now, I could feel the part of him that still wanted me. And worse, the part of me that wanted him back. Lightning split the sky again, throwing our faces into sharp relief, his eyes locked on mine, pupils blown wide. For an instant, the fury cracked, replaced by something hungrier, deeper. He took another step forward. I should have moved back. I didn't. The air between us vibrated. My wolf stirred weakly inside me for the first time in days, her voice trembling but alive. I swallowed hard. "Why did you come after me, Isaak?" He didn't answer right away. The muscles in his jaw worked, his hands flexing at his sides. Finally he said, "Because I can't." He broke off, eyes flashing as he turned his head away. "Because I can't let you leave. Not like this." My chest tightened. "You mean, not with everyone knowing your Luna ran away?" His gaze snapped back to me, sharp as a blade. "Don't twist my words, then say what you mean," I demanded. "If I'm a curse, if you don't want me, then let me go." He didn't move, didn't speak. The silence stretched until I thought I might break from it. Then he whispered, almost too low to hear, "I tried." His emotions crashed through the connection, rage, confusion, desire so fierce it burned. His wolf was howling inside him, and through that echo I could feel my own stir in answer. The world tilted. The rain blurred around us. He took a step closer, then another, until the heat of him reached me through the storm, until I could see the rain sliding down his throat, could hear the rough hitch of his breathing. "Stop," I whispered. "Don't do this." But he didn't stop. His hand came up and brushed my cheek. The touch burned. My breath caught and I leaned into it. For one wild heartbeat, the bond roared to life, silver fire racing through my veins, every nerve alight. I felt his heart hammering through the connection, the same frantic rhythm as mine. He leaned closer, voice rough and low. "Tell me to stop. I wanted to. Goddess, I wanted to." But the truth was there between us, shimmering in the rain. "I hate you," I whispered instead. The distance between us vanished. His mouth crashed against mine, and for a moment there was no rain, no border, no pack, just him, just us. And then I broke away, gasping. The connection snapped like a whip, flooding both of us with pain. He staggered back, his hand still half raised, as if he didn't understand what he'd done. I pressed a hand to my chest, the mark beneath my skin pulsing weakly. "I can't do this," I choked out. He didn't answer. He just stood there, drenched, chest heaving, eyes wild with something I couldn't name. Finally, I said, "You call me a curse? Maybe you're right. But if I am, then what are you doing here? Why are you here?" And before he could speak, before the bond could drag me back toward him again, I turned and continued walking. Behind me, I thought I heard his voice, maybe even my name. But I didn't look back, because if I did, I wasn't sure I'd have the strength to keep walking. Isaak's Povo. The moment I woke, I knew she was gone. The space beside me was cold, the scent of her already fading under the damp morning air. The forest outside was quiet. My wolf stirred beneath my skin. I sat up fast, breath sharp. The ground was a mess of footprints and crushed leaves, proof of how quickly she'd left. My chest tightened at the sight. The mark over my heart pulsed weakly, the faint echo of the bond I'd broken and betrayed. Last night blurred in fragments. The rain, her voice, the heat between us that had nothing to do with hate, and everything to do with the thing I couldn't admit aloud. I dragged a hand through my hair, anger rising like smoke. "You should have stayed," I muttered to the empty clearing. But she hadn't, and now I could feel her moving farther away. By the time I reached the pack house, dawn had broken over the valley. Moonbane's scouts stood waiting near the gates, eyes sharp, posture tense. They saluted as I passed, though their gazes flicked toward the forest behind me. Word traveled fast. Even if no one dared ask where I'd been, they knew something had changed. "Alpha," my beta, Kalen called, stepping forward. "Patrols found fresh scent trails near the ridge. It matches the Omegas. Her name is Sierra," I growled. My beta simply cocked a discerning brow at me. "Forgive me, Alpha. The scent matches Sierra's." "Did she cross the border?" "Not yet." My wolf surged at the thought, a growl rumbling low in my throat. Find her. I couldn't tell them that was exactly what I planned to do. An alpha didn't chase what he'd rejected. An alpha didn't look haunted by an Omega's absence. I didn't even deserve to, not after the pure humiliation I'd put her through. So I lied. "Double the patrols," I ordered. "If she's still within our borders, bring her back, unharmed." Callan hesitated. "And if she's crossed?" I looked toward the mountains, their peaks shrouded in cloud. "Then she's no longer ours." He nodded and moved off. But as soon as he was gone, I turned toward the forest, shifting to my wolf as I ran through the trees. Each breath I took was full of her scent, faint as it is. Rain, pine, and that soft note that had driven me mad from the moment the goddess bound us. I didn't care about pride. Not anymore. I needed her by my side no matter what. Sierra's Pove. By the time the scouts found my scent, I was already halfway up the ridge. The rain had stopped, but the air was thick with mist, curling low across the mountains like breath. My limbs and lungs burned from the climb, my fingers scraped raw from the rocks. Still, I didn't stop. The forest here was thinner, the ground wet and slippery from the previous night's rain. Somewhere behind me, wolves howled. Moonbane. I'd imagined they'd come after me after last night, but it had been faster than I thought. I pressed my hand against a tree, forcing myself to breathe, and then I ran as fast as my feet could take me up the incline. A crack of branches below made me falter. Voices carried on the wind, hurried footsteps trudging the ground behind me. "Trail leads this way." I picked up my pace. The path narrowed, turning rocky and steep. The world blurred into green and then gray. My wolf stirred, desperate to shift, to run faster, but I held her back. If I shifted, they'd smell me instantly. A shout echoed below. I ducked behind a fallen tree, chest heaving, trying to quiet my breath. And then I felt him, Not through sound, through the bond. He's near. I crawled low through the brush, careful not to leave a clear trail. The mountain rose sharply ahead, its narrow path vanishing into fog. It was dangerous, steep enough to break a neck if I slipped, but it led out of Moonbane territory. And I would rather die on my feet than go back to face the humiliation of rejection, and the humiliation of being caught running from that rejection. When I glanced down the slope, I caught a glimpse of movement, dark figures weaving between the trees, scouts, and behind them a presence that burned brighter, Isaak. Sierra, his wolf, whispered faintly through the bond, "Don't run." Tears stung my eyes, but I kept moving. "You don't get to want me now," I muttered under my breath. A loose rock gave way beneath my foot. I slipped, pain flaring through my knee as I hit the ground. The scent of blood spilled sharp into the air. I forced myself up, limping, half crawling until the ground leveled out near a ridge. Wind tore through my hair, the world below spinning dizzy and wild. For a moment I looked back, at him, at his tall and broad figure. The sun caught his features in a way that made him absolutely beautiful. He didn't move, but I did. I continued towards the ridge and descended the crest. By the time the sun broke over the peaks, I far passed Moonbane territory. The air grew colder, the forest thinner. My body ached, my hands raw and bleeding, but I didn't stop until the last trace of his scent disappeared behind the wind. When I finally collapsed beneath a pine tree, leaning against the mark and trying to catch my breath, I let the silence wash over me. I was shaking, not from cold, but from everything I'd left behind, or everything I hadn't, because what even did I have? I looked up at the mountains towering above, their peaks glowing gold beneath the rising sun. Somewhere beyond them lay a new life, a better life. I smiled. For the first time since the ceremony, I didn't feel like a reject, like a mistake if the goddess. I felt alive, Sierra's Pove. The first days after crossing the border were nothing but pain and silence. My body ached from the climb and my knee was swollen from the fall. The mountains gave way to lawless woods, where no pack claimed rule and no scent held dominance for long. The air here was sharp and the wind carried no trace of Moonbane, no trace of him. I kept walking. The forest became my world, a shifting maze of trees and shadows where I learned what it meant to survive. I drank from cold streams, stole warmth from abandoned dens, and ate what I could trap or forage. My wolf, weakened by rejection, stirred sluggishly inside me, but she was there. We leaned on each other the way wounded things do. She lent me strength when my body failed, and I gave her hope when despair crept close. Days blurred into nights. I learned to hide my scent, rolling in river mud, masking it with crushed herbs and wild mint. I learned the ways of rogues, how to move without leaving prints, how to listen for danger in the spaces between silence. And slowly I changed. The Omega who once bowed her head in the Moonbane Hall was gone. What replaced her was leaner, sharper, a creature born of hunger and stubborn will. Sometimes I thought of Isaak. Not out of longing, but anger. I thought of his face when he said, "I reject you." The coldness, the pride. And then that night under the rain, how it had felt when his walls had cracked, when something real had replaced that cold rejection. I told myself it meant nothing, that it had been weakness, not love. But lies taste bitter after too long. One morning, as frost glittered across the undergrowth, I found a stream and crouched to drink. My reflection startled me. My skin was paler, my cheeks were hollow, and my eyes were shadowed with exhaustion, but my gaze was steady. Weeks passed. The days grew longer, warmer. I built a small shelter near the edge of a clearing, woven from branches and bark. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Then the sickness began. It started with nausea. The smell of meat made me gag, even water turned sour in my mouth. At first I thought it was infection, some wound festering or poison from the roots I'd eaten. But when I pressed a hand to my belly, a strange warmth lingered beneath my skin, like a pulse that wasn't mine. And not just one, but two. "Do you feel that?" I whispered to my wolf. Her answer was soft. "Yes." The realization hit me like thunder. I sank to my knees, the world spinning, my breath caught somewhere between laughter and tears. "No," I murmured. "No, it can't be." But it was. The goddess in her cruel and twisted mercy had left me a piece of him, of us. My hands shook as I held them over my stomach. There was life inside me. The nausea returned in waves, but I didn't care. I curled against the cold ground. Tears slipped down my cheeks. The bond I thought was dead flickered faintly, not to him, but to them. A thread of light in the dark. For the first time since the ceremony, my heart didn't ache for what I'd lost. It ached for what I had to protect. The days that followed were a blur of fierce determination. I gathered herbs for strength, hunted smaller prey, built stronger walls around my shelter. My wolf healed faster than I ever expected, her instincts sharpened by the presence of the lives growing inside us. Food came harder to find as my belly began to swell, but I learned to adapt. I trapped rabbits, picked berries, drank from streams when the nausea allowed. The forest became both my prison and my protector. Sometimes I caught the scent of strangers, rogues passing through, their musk heavy with hunger and violence, but I hid well. I wasn't the trembling omega they could toy with. I was something else now, something the goddess had reforged in blood and grief. When the moon rose full over the clearing, I lay beneath it, hand over my stomach, whispering to the life inside. "You'll never know pain like I did," I told them softly. "Never bow to anyone. You'll run free. You'll be strong." My wolf purred inside me, her warmth wrapping around the promise. I closed my eyes, letting the moonlight bathe my skin. The wind carried the scent of rain and pine and distant wolves, but I no longer feared it. Let them hunt, let them search. I was done being prey. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself moving slower but surer. My senses sharpened, every sound, every scent clearer than before. The pups were growing fast, their movements more pronounced. Sometimes I felt one kick when I laughed, or when I whispered a song I half remembered from the pack nursery. Those were the only moments I let myself smile. One evening, I caught my reflection again in the stream. My face was softer now, rounded by the signs of life I carried. But my eyes, those had changed the most. They were no longer afraid. Still, some nights I woke with my heart pounding, convinced I could feel Isaac's presence across the distance. The bond, though faint, pulsed sometimes. I ignored it. I couldn't let him find me. Not now. Not ever. Because the moment he saw me, he would see them. And I knew what an alpha did when faced with a threat to his legacy. He'd see bastards. I saw miracles. So I hid deeper into rogue lands, traveling farther each week, following the rivers that led toward the northern hills. The air grew colder again, but I welcomed it. The cold made the world clean, sharp, honest. At night, when the pups stirred, I told them stories. About the moon that watched over all wolves, about strength that doesn't come from bloodlines but from heart, about a mother who once thought she was broken and learned she was unbreakable. The goddess had taken much from me, my place, my pride, my bond, but she had left me this. 2 heartbeats where there had once been none. 2 tiny souls that gave me reason to keep fighting. And fight I would. If Moonbane ever came for me, if he ever came for me, they would find not a frightened omega, but a mother, fierce and wild and ready to burn the forest down before she let them touch what was hers. The thought didn't scare me. It steadied me. Because this time I wasn't going to run from anything. Sierra's pav. I lay curled beside the small fire I'd built, the flames flickering low. The pups shifted restlessly inside me, 2 faint pulses that reminded me I wasn't truly alone, no matter how deep the silence pressed. The world outside was nothing but black woods and wind. I should have been asleep, but my mind wouldn't quiet. It had been months since I'd left Moonbane, but the memory of that life still hunted me. Some nights I could almost hear their laughter again. The jeers, the rejection, Isaac's voice sharp as a blade. I closed my eyes, trying to focus on the steady beat beneath my ribs. 1, 2, 2 heartbeats. My reason to keep breathing. At some point, exhaustion dragged me under. At first, I thought I was dreaming of snow. White drifted all around me, soft and endless, glittering beneath a light that didn't belong to the sun or moon. The air was thick with silver dust, glowing faintly as it fell. I couldn't feel my body. My feet touched nothing, yet I was standing. Then a voice came. Sierra. The sound wasn't sound at all. It rippled through the air, through me, vibrating in my bones. I turned and the world around me shifted, snow becoming mist, mist becoming light. And in the center of it she appeared. The moon goddess. I had never seen her before, only heard prayers and stories whispered by elders who spoke her name with reverence. But now she stood before me, tall, draped in robes that moved like water, her hair a cascade of white that seemed to bleed into the stars themselves. Her eyes were the color of creation, too bright, too knowing. I wanted to bow, but my body wouldn't move. Her gaze fixed on me, and I felt every sin, every doubt, every fear I'd ever carried flare under her sight. "You run from what I have given," she said, her voice echoing like thunder, whispered through glass. My throat went dry. I didn't run. I simply left where I was not wanted. Besides, I never asked for any of this. Few do. The light around us pulsed, and suddenly the ground was no longer mist but cracked stone. The air reeked of smoke. Flames flickered in the distance, shadows of wolves tearing through ruin. I recognized the place. Moonbane territory, or what remained of it. My heart lurched. What is this? A glimpse. I turned, searching the horizon. The mountains were broken. Rivers ran black beneath the silver moon. A tremor ran through me. No, this isn't real. The goddess tilted her head slightly, almost pitying. Not yet. What do you want from me? I whispered. Why are you showing me this? For the first time her expression changed. Grief shadowed her features. I gave you to him, she said quietly, so the world could be remade. The words froze me. Remade? I don't understand. She stepped closer. The air hummed with power. Each footfall made the ground bloom with silver light that vanished as quickly as it appeared. The old packs rot from pride, she said. They devour the weak and forget the balance I built. You were never meant to kneel, child of the Omega line. You carry the first light of the pack. The phrase struck like lightning, the first light of the pack. What does that mean? I asked, desperate. But the goddess only raised her hand. When the moon bleeds and the earth burns, remember those words. Protect what you carry, for through your blood the first light will rise again. The ground trembled beneath us, the ruins of Moonbane flickered, and a shadowed figure appeared, standing where the pack house had once been. The image blurred, but I saw him clearly for a heartbeat. Isaak, kneeling among the ashes, his eyes hollow, his hands covered in blood. I flinched. No, he did this? The goddess's face was unreadable. Every Alpha must face the weight of his sins. Every Luna bears the price of creation. Then her form began to fade. Wait, I cried. Tell me what to do. What am I supposed to? The light shattered. I woke screaming. The forest was still dark, my fire nearly dead. Sweat slicked my skin, and the cold night air hit me like a slap. My heart was racing so hard it hurt. It took a moment to realize I was crying. The pups shifted again, as if startled by my panic. I pressed a trembling hand to my stomach. It's okay, I whispered hoarsely. You're safe, you're safe. But my words felt thin against the silence. The dream still clung to me, her voice and that terrible vision. The phrase echoed louder than all of it, the first light of the pack. What does it mean? I murmured. My wolf was quiet for a long time before she answered. It means destiny. I almost laughed. Destiny? For me? For them, she corrected softly. For what grows inside you. A chill slid through me that had nothing to do with the cold. I fed the fire, watching sparks rise into the dark, and tried to steady my breathing. The dream couldn't be real. It was exhaustion, hunger, fear, all twisting into madness. And yet, the bond that had been silent for months flickered faintly, like a dying light. Was he dreaming too? I shook my head, forcing the thought away. I couldn't afford to think of him. Not when the goddess herself had spoken of prophecy and ruin. But her words wouldn't leave me. The first light of the pack. It haunted me through the next days. Every time the wind shifted or the moon rose red through the trees, I thought I saw her again, glimpses of silver in the mist, a whisper just beyond hearing. If the goddess was right, if what grew in my womb truly carried something powerful, then I couldn't die here. I couldn't let fear break me. Because whatever was coming, the blood, the fire, the fall of the packs, it would find me eventually. And when it did, I needed to be ready. Sierra's Po V. The mountains had softened by the time I found them, the rogues who called themselves a family. Not a pack. They were careful about that word. Packs had laws, ranks, cages. These people only had each other. They lived where the forest bent around an old river, their huts made of driftwood and stone. Smoke curled from chimneys. Laughter rose with the scent of roasting meat, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel hunted. They found me collapsed near the riverbank, half-starved and shivering. A scar-faced man named Varro carried me to their healer. An older woman, bones sharp as branches, hair white as frost, looked me over without a word. When she touched my swollen belly, her eyes softened. "You'll do," she murmured. "Both of you will do just fine." That was how I met Neelam, the midwife. The days blurred together after that. Life among the outcasts was rough but honest. We mended nets, gathered herbs, hunted when the weather allowed. I earned my place quickly. I could clean game and patch wounds, and I knew which plants dulled pain or woke fever. The rogues treated me with a wary kind of respect. No one asked where I came from. Everyone here was running from something. As my belly grew, Neelam began teaching me small things, like how to breathe through pain, how to listen to my own body. She had the patience of stone and the voice of thunder when someone disobeyed her. The others called her the witch, half in fear, half in gratitude. I called her mother. She only laughed when I did. "Don't go giving me titles, girl. The moon listens when names are spoken too loudly." I remembered the dream then, the goddess, the prophecy, and shivered. By the 8th month, the storms began. Every night the clouds rolled in from the west, lightning struck at the mountains. The air smelled of change. Neelam said it was the season shifting. I wasn't so sure. The pups were restless. They kicked constantly, their strength startling. Sometimes one moved and the other stilled, like they were listening to something I couldn't hear. "They're fighting for the world they're coming into," Neelam said one night as she pressed an ear to my belly. "Strong hearts, both. You'll have your hands full." Her words should have comforted me. Instead, they left a cold knot in my chest, especially when I remembered what the dream. The night they came was a night the sky split open. The rain started before sunset, hammering against the roofs until the ground became a river. Lightning flashed white across the valley, illuminating the forest like the breath of gods. Pain woke me, and Neelam was at my side before I could cry out, her hands already busy, her voice steady. "Easy now. Breathe. The storm's just lending its song to the little ones." I wanted to believe her, but every contraction felt like the forest itself was tearing. My body shook, my breath came ragged. Outside, thunder answered every scream I swallowed. The cabin flickered with candlelight, the air smelled of herbs and blood. "You're doing fine," Neelam said. "They're eager. The first one's almost here." Her words blurred through the pain. I remember gripping the edge of the bed, sweat slick on my palms. My wolf stirred weakly inside me, lending what strength she could. Then, with one final cry that tore through my throat, and the storm alike, the first child came. The sound of his cry filled the room. Neelam lifted him into the light. "A boy," she said softly, her wrinkled hands steady. "Strong lungs. Look at him, girl." I could barely see through tears, but when I did, my heart stopped. He was perfect, small, red-faced, furious at the cold, and when he opened his eyes, they were violet. Bright, molten violet, just like mine. I turned away. "There's another." I gasped. Neelam nodded. "Yes, the moon promised too." The second came slower, quieter. For a terrible moment I thought she wouldn't cry at all, but then a weak sound escaped her lips. Neelam wrapped her in a blanket, wiped her face gently, and then paused. Her gaze caught mine. "You'd better look at this one too." Her eyes were silver, pale and cold as moonlight. Just like Isaac's, they reflected the candle flame like glass. The goddess's words whispered again, the first light of the pack. Neelam laid them both on my chest. They were warm and impossibly small. I felt the world tilt around them, the storm, the thunder, even my own pain fading to nothing. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw a shape in the corner of the room, a woman made of light, her eyes the color of stars, but when I blinked, she was gone. Neelam cleaned the room in silence while I held my children. The fire crackled low, the rain still roaring against the roof. When she finally spoke, her tone had changed. "Twins born under 2 moons, she murmured. "That's no small omen." I looked to her, confused. 2 moons? She pointed to the window. Outside, through the storm clouds, the sky had split, one full moon glowing pale and white, another haloed faintly in red behind it, as if the heavens themselves couldn't decide which to show. Neelam's voice dropped to a whisper. 2 moons, 2 souls, destiny and ruin, side by side. Remember that, girl. The words chilled me. "What does it mean?" I asked. She tied her herbs, her movements methodical. "It means they were never meant to be ordinary. Neither were you." I looked down at them. The violet-eyed one had already fallen asleep. His tiny hand curled into a fist. The silver-eyed twin stared up at me, unblinking, as if she understood every word. I shook my head. They're just children. My children. Nilam gave me a look that carried centuries. The moon doesn't give ordinary gifts, Sierra. It gives burdens wrapped in love. Her words sank into me like stones. When she left me to rest, I sat awake for hours, listening to the storm fade into silence. My children slept against my skin, their breathing soft and even. The moonlight slipped through the cracks in the roof, washing over their faces. For a moment, their eyes opened together, violet and silver gleaming like twin stars. I thought of the prophecy, of the goddess, of the pack that had cast me out. A strange calm filled me. "You'll never be theirs," I whispered. "You'll belong to no Alpha, no goddess, only to yourselves." Outside, the storm gave a final rumble before dying away. I felt like the world had begun again here, in a cabin of rogues, with two tiny hearts beating against my hands. Sierra's Pove. The morning light spilled over the valley like gold poured from the heavens. From the balcony of my hall, I watched the mist curl over the roofs of Ithacus, the settlement the world called a haven for rogues, but I called home. 7 years ago, this land was a ruin between territories, nothing but a rural land with sparse settlement. Now, smoke rose from chimneys, laughter echoed from the training grounds, and the scent of baking bread drifted through the air. Children ran barefoot past traders and blacksmiths, their joy loud enough to drown the ghosts that used to haunt this place. They called me Lady Heiress here. Some said it with reverence, others with the wariness one gives to legends that have grown teeth. I didn't mind either way. Ithaca was not built for their praise, it was it for survival, for my children, and for all who ran. "Mother?" The shout pulled me from my thoughts. Down in the clearing, two small figures circled each other, wooden swords clacking together. Nyx and Zephyr, 7 years old, full of spirit, chaos, and light. Nyx, with her pale hair and solemn silver eyes, held her sword too loosely, but her stance was patient. She moved like water, flowing where her brother struck. Zephyr, his dark hair damp with sweat, attacked with the reckless energy of a wildfire. He lunged, missed, and grinned anyway, bearing tiny canines as though he already fancied himself a warrior. "Focus, Zephyr!" I called down. "I am focusing!" he yelled back, nearly tripping over his own foot. Nyx sighed, stepping aside so gracefully it looked like a dance. "You're swinging too hard again," she said, voice soft but firm. Zephyr frowned, then lowered his sword. "You always talk like an elder, Nyx. It's weird." "Someone has to," she murmured, brushing a strand of white hair from her face. Her calm was eerie sometimes, an echo of something older than both of us. I smiled faintly. They were so different, and yet so bound. Even their wrist marks, the faint crescents glowing faintly under sunlight, seemed to pulse in rhythm when they stood close. I had long since stopped wondering if it was magic or merely the moon's reminder of what they were. When I descended the steps toward them, the settlement parted slightly around me. Traders dipped their heads, guards straightened, not from fear but respect, the kind forged in hardship, not bloodline. "Lady Heiress," a woman greeted as she passed me, a huntress with a bow slung across her shoulder. "The northern scouts returned. No trouble from the packs this week." "Good," I said. "Let them rest, and tell Jorah to double patrol at the river crossing." The woman nodded, disappearing toward the stables. Wolves. Even now the word tasted bitter. 7 years and still, sometimes at night, I felt the bond flicker faintly in my chest, the ghost of what Isaak and I had been. It no longer burned, but it lingered like smoke after fire, a reminder that even rejection leaves an imprint on the soul, but I had made peace with it, or something close to peace. "Mother," Zephyr called again, running toward me with a grin. "Did you see? I almost won this time." I arched a brow. "Almost?" He stopped short, frowning. "She's too fast." "Or too patient," Nyx said, joining us, wooden sword tucked neatly under her arm. I crouched before them, brushing dirt from Zephyr's tunic. "You both did well, but fighting isn't always about strength or speed. It's about knowing when to strike and when not to." Zephyr tilted his head. "Like you when you fought that big Alpha?" I froze, then exhaled slowly. "Something like that." Nyx's gaze sharpened, too knowing for her age. "Was he really a monster?" she asked quietly. My heart stumbled. "Who told you that?" "The traders," she said. "They say you defeated a cruel Alpha who hunted Omegas. That's why the goddess gave you this land." I wanted to laugh, but it came out as a sigh. The story had grown wild in the telling. Stories change when they pass through too many mouths. Remember that, both of you. Nyx nodded solemnly. Zephyr just looked disappointed that I hadn't slain a beast with my bare hands. As I straightened, a gust swept through the settlement, carrying the scent of pine and steel. The forge clanged in the distance, voices rose in the marketplace. For the first time in years, I felt proud, not of surviving, but of building. We had carved order from chaos. Rogues, outcasts, forgotten wolves, they came to Ithaca with nothing but scars, and now they stood shoulder to shoulder as a people. Hunters, healers, builders, traders. We had given them a home, and in return, they had given the land purpose. At dusk, when the twins were finally tired of playing, I turned to my children, smiling faintly. Come, the feast is waiting. The night brought celebration of the new rouges who had come to us for shelter. Lanterns swung from ropes above the square, and music rose from the fires. The rogues of Ithaca gathered, their laughter loud enough to drown the memory of exile. I sat among them, no throne, no crown, just Lady Eris, mother and assigned leader. My children dozed against me, their small hands still clutching each other's. Nyx murmured something in her sleep, a word I didn't recognize. Zephyr stirred, pressing closer to her. Across the flames, old Nilam, the healer who had delivered them, watched me. Her weathered face softened. They're growing fast, she said. They are, I murmured. You'll have to tell them the truth someday. I met her gaze. I know. They deserve to know who they are. I looked down at my children, the prophecy etched on their skin, the impossible future in their eyes. Was not yet, I said quietly. Let them have peace a little longer. The old woman nodded, understanding. The world would come for them soon enough. Later, when the fire had burnt out and the music faded, I stood once more beneath the moon. Its light bathed the valley in silver, cold and pure. I thought of the goddess's words, the ones that had haunted me since the night of my dream. Your blood carries the first light of the pack. I looked back to my children and then gathered them in my hands. I took them to our residence and to their rooms and laid them to sleep. I watched them, smiling to myself, enjoying this peace before morning brought news I was not ready for. Sierra's Pav. The messenger arrived at dawn, long before Ithacus woke up. I smelled him before I saw him, foreign wolf, carrying the sharp scent of diplomacy. The wind brought his nervous sweat all the way to my hall. My wolf lifted her head, alert and annoyed. Visitors this early rarely brought good news. I stepped outside, cloak wrapped around me, with a scarf around my face. The icy morning air stung my cheeks. The sky over the mountains glowed faintly with sunrise. Below, the settlement still slept with early hunters stretching in shifting wolf form. The messenger stood at the gate, flanked by my guards. He straightened with visible relief when he saw me. My lady, he said, bowing deeply. Forgive the intrusion. I carry a summons. A summons. I descended the steps, every sense sharpening. From whom? He hesitated, a flicker of fear flashing in his eyes. From the Alpha's council. The words hit harder than any blow. Xenox, my close confidant in all areas who had followed me silently, cursed under his breath. Damn them! What do they want now? The messenger continued, voice shaking despite his rehearsed composure. A summit of Alphas has been called. 2 weeks from today, all packs are required to send representatives. And this concerns me. Why? I asked coolly. Ithacus is not a pack. No, it is not. His throat bobbed. Which is exactly why they ask for you. That stopped me. He held out a sealed scroll, the mark of the Alpha's council. A circle, a blade, and a moon on it. But something else tugged at me, something that made my fingers tingle the moment I touched the scroll. The faint trace of Moonbane's scent. I inhaled sharply. Not Isaac's scent exactly, more like an echo of his lands, but it was enough to tighten the old, unwelcome ache in my chest. I broke the seal. The letter was short, formal, and heavy with political weight. Lady Eris of Ithacus. As a rising neutral power and the foremost representative of rogue-held territory, your presence is requested at the summit of Alphas. In the interest of peace, unity, and resolution of recent cross-territory conflicts, your attendance is crucial. Come as ally, observer, or voice of the rogue nations. You will be given safe passage. Signed, the High Council of Alphas. Xenox peered over my shoulder. Neutral power, he muttered. That's a pretty way of saying threat. I folded the parchment. They want to end the rogue wars. Or they want to chain us, Xenox shot back. You shouldn't go." The messenger stiffened. "My lady, attendance is mandatory. Refusal will be interpreted as defiance." I finished for him. "I'm aware." His silence confirmed it. I inhaled the cold mountain air, letting it settle in my lungs, letting it burn away the flicker of doubt. Ithacus had become stronger than any rogue settlement before us. Strong enough that the Alphas felt the shift. "Give your counsel my answer," I said. "I accept." Xenox stepped forward. "Sierra." "I said I accept," I repeated, voice like sharpened ice. "Ithacus will be represented." The messenger bowed, relief washing over his face. "I will return with escorts in 7 days, my lady." He departed quickly as if afraid Ithacus itself might swallow him whole. When he was gone, Xenox stepped before me. "A summit of Alphas, Lady Aris. You know what that means. Politics. Power games. Wolves who wouldn't hesitate to kill you if it meant their borders expanded." "Let them try," I said. His jaw clenched. "And Moonbane will be there." My heartbeat stuttered. "Isaak has nothing to do with this." I lifted my chin. "He made his choice years ago. I made mine." Xenox studied me with the knowing, wary gaze of a man who had watched me survive what should have broken me. "Fine," he said at last. "Then what do you need us to do?" I exhaled. "Prepare Ithacus," quietly. "If the Alphas fear us now, they'll fear us even more when I stand before them." He nodded slowly. "I'll rally the council." "And Xenox?" "Yes, my lady?" "Find Neelam." His brows lifted. "The witch? Why?" "Because if we're walking into a den of Alphas," I murmured, "I want every ounce of wisdom we have." By afternoon, the news had spread through Ithacus like wildfire. The market buzzed with anxious voices. Some feared it meant war, others said it meant peace. Still others whispered that the goddess's prophecy, about my children and about the first light of the pack. I felt their unease, but I did not share it. I had walked through worse. I had survived abandonment, rejection, childbirth in a storm. I had built a home out of broken wolves. Facing a room of Alphas? Please, let them bare their teeth. I wouldn't bow. When the twins found me later, I was standing in the training yard watching our fighters spar. Zephyr bounded up first, practically vibrating. "Mother!" "They said you're near the Alpha Summit. Is that true?" "Can we come?" I smoothed a hand through his dark hair. "No, Fireheart, you and Nyx will stay here." His golden eyes flared in protest. But we can help! We're strong!" Beside him, Nyx approached silently, her expression calm but troubled. "Is the summit dangerous?" she asked. My heart clenched, not with fear, but with the fierce, consuming love that motherhood had carved into me. "It might be," I admitted, "but I'm not going to fight. I'm going to listen, to negotiate." Zephyr scrunched his nose. "But if someone tries to hurt you—" "They won't," I said. "They may wish to, but they won't dare, because Ithacus stands behind me, and so do both of you." Nyx's small hand slid into mine. "The moon is loud today," she whispered. "Be careful, Mother." I brushed my thumb over her wrist where the faint moon mark glowed faintly beneath her skin. "I will," I promised. Neelam found me before dusk, leaning heavily on her carved staff. "You're going," she said without greeting. Her voice rasped like gravel. "To the summit." "Yes," I replied. Her pale eyes narrowed. "Destiny is stirring around you again. I warned you the twins were no simple children. Where you go, their shadows will follow." "This summit isn't about them," I insisted. "It's about power and politics." Neelam scoffed. "Power and politics are pawns of prophecy. Do not be blind, girl." I forced my voice steady. "What do you see?" She leaned closer, the smell of herbs and old storms clinging to her. "I see an old bond awakening. I see wolves gathering like thunderclouds, and I see a man with silver eyes walking toward fate with blood on his hands." My pulse hammered painfully. "Isaak." I stiffened. "I don't care what he does. You will," she said, "and that is the danger." I swallowed hard. "Give me advice, Neelam," I said quietly. "Not riddles." She tapped her staff against the ground. "Then hear this clearly. Go to the summit, but do not walk blind. Destiny is a hungry creature, and it remembers its chosen." Sierra's paw. The moment our convoy crossed the border into Moonbane territory, the air changed. The pine forest grew darker and thicker. The wind carried the undertone of pack scent and familiar dominance. Every instinct in my wolf recoiled, fur bristling beneath my skin. 7 years, and still this land felt like a bruise I'd never fully healed from. Xenox rode beside my carriage, eyes scanning every passing tree. "You're quiet," he murmured. "I'm always quiet," I said. We last right through the forest I had fled through, wounded and half-conscious. The river bend where I first felt the bond fade. The ridge in the town area where Bethelina laughed at me. Every tree whispered the same thing. You don't belong here. But I wasn't Sierra the Omega anymore. Today I arrived as Lady Heiress of Ithacus. The carriage slowed as the Moonbane stronghold came into view. The pack house loomed in the distance, larger than I remembered, banners fluttering with the emblem of the silver moon. Wolves lined the path. Warriors, guards, elites. Their posture was stiff and far more tense than any welcoming party should be. The carriage stopped. A guard struck the ground with his spear. Welcome, Lady Heiress of Ithacus. The Alpha's summit thanks you for your presence. I stepped down from the carriage, letting my cloak spill behind me like shadowed water. Conversations hushed instantly. Wolves straightened as though something ancient had walked into their midst. Then I saw him. Isaak. He stood near the high steps of the pack house, flanked by Bethelina on his right and several Alphas on his left. He was taller, broader, and his shoulders rigid with dominance, his jaw carved from stone. His hair was slightly longer, tied loosely at the nape. Time had sharpened him into something dangerously cold. But his eyes, those silver eyes I once thought could see through me, were the worst. Because the moment he looked in my direction, something inside him flinched. And his wolf, his wolf felt me. Even through the herbs masking my scent, even beneath the iron and wolf fur cloak, even with my face hidden behind the dark mask, his wolf surged to the surface so fast his eyes flashed pure metallic. He gripped the railing beside him, knuckles whitening. Bethelina noticed immediately. Her perfectly painted lips tightened. She leaned in, whispering something to him, but he didn't look at her. His eyes were pinned to me, breath shallow, pupils blown wide. Xenox muttered under his breath, "Well, that's unexpected." Unexpected? No. Terrifying? Yes. Because for the first time since the night I fled the Moonbane territory, I felt the faint electric echo of a bond I thought long dead. I shoved it down, hard. I bowed, not too deeply, but just enough to acknowledge the gathering. Moonbane welcomes you to our grounds, a counselor from Moonbane said in greeting. Before I could respond, another Alpha, broad-shouldered with scars across his jaw and a teasing smirk on his lips, stepped forward with an exaggerated flourish. His eyes drifted to the crates behind my envoy, filled with rare ores, weapons forged in Ithacus, and shimmering stone jewelry. "Lady Heiress," he said loudly, "trying to show off, are we? Arriving with half a mountain in gifts?" Laughter rippled through the crowd. I let it roll off me like smoke. Then I tilted my head just enough to show amused disdain. "It is an appealing trait," I answered smoothly, "not to visit empty-handed." The Alpha blinked. Xenox coughed to hide his grin. Isaak's stare darkened, but whether from anger or something else, I couldn't tell. "Lady Heiress," Bethelina said, stepping forward with a sweet smile sharp as venom, "a household has been dedicated for your stay. I trust you find it comfortable." I bowed my head slightly. "I am certain it will suffice." Her smile twitched. An escort of Moonbane guards approached. "We will lead you and your envoy," one said. "Your warriors may rest. Your gifts will be unloaded shortly." "See to it," Xenox commanded, slipping seamlessly into the role of beta advisor. As we turned toward the guest estate, I felt Isaac's stare burn between my shoulder blades. I didn't look back. I refused to. The guest house was not just comfortable, it was excessive. Polished floors that I could see my reflection in with rich pelts carved into wooden frames. The exterior was large, with room for training and the livestock we came with. Numerous room for the entire envoy and extremely modern compared to Ithacus's brutalist approach to architecture. We had barely settled when a thunderous knock rattled the door. Xenox moved immediately. "Stay behind me." A young Moonbane scout bowed hastily when the door opened. "Lady Heiress," he said, voice trembling, we found 2 stowaways in the carriages carrying your gifts." My blood froze. No, they wouldn't. I strode past the startled scout, my cloak snapping behind me like a storm. Xenox cursed but followed close. The scouts led us to the rear courtyard where the crates had been lined for inspection, and my heart stopped. 2 small figures sat on the ground, guarded but unharmed. Nyx, Zephyr, my children. Zephyr's eyes darted around wildly, purple, burning with defiance. Nyx's silver eyes met mine calmly. "Mother," she said softly. Zephyr burst into a run. I caught him before he collided with me, holding him tight, my breath shaking. "What are you doing here?" My voice was a harsh whisper. "I told you to stay in Ithacus." Nyx walked up more slowly, her small hands lifting to press to my arm. "We couldn't let you go alone." Zephyr clung to my cloak. "We hid in the crates with the stone gifts. We padded the lids with blankets. Nobody hurt us." "Children," I breathed, "you do not understand what danger." Ahem. A deep voice cut through the courtyard. Cold washed over me. I turned slowly. Isaak stood not 10 paces away. Moonbane guards flanked him. Bethelina lingered at his side, eyes narrowed, lips twitching with irritation. But Isaak wasn't looking at Bethelina. His gaze was locked on my son's purple eyes, and then on Nyx's silver ones. Silver like his own, but brighter. His wolf lunged so violently his entire body jerked, silver flooding his irises. My breath snagged. "Not now. Not like this." Bethelina stepped forward, voice sharp. "Alpha, perhaps we should..." But he didn't hear her. He stared at me, then at the children, then back at me. Nyx's fingers curled into my cloak. Zephyr stepped in front of me protectively, tiny but fierce. I placed a steadying hand on each of them. "My envoy," I said coolly, as if my pulse wasn't roaring in my ears, "and I will handle this privately. Thank you for finding them." Isaac's jaw flexed. "Those children are mine," before he could finish. Bethelina's eyes widened. Isaak went still. I lifted my chin, mask hiding everything my face threatened to betray. "And they will remain with me." Silence stretched, tight and electric. Bethelina's voice finally broke it, brittle and bright. "Alpha, we should go. Now." Isaak didn't move, his wolf clawed at him, and his eyes wouldn't leave mine. "Not even for a second. Sierra's Pove." The banquet hall of Moonbane had always been meant to intimidate. Tall ceilings carved with stone, silver torches burning blue, banners draped in sharp lines of dominance and pride. Years ago, I would have cowered just stepping through the doorway. Tonight, I walked in masked, and the room turned to look at me as if a storm had entered in human form. Whispers spread like wildfire. "That's the Ithacus envoy. Lady Eris. She commands rogues." "Is she dangerous?" "She smells like nothing." "How is that possible?" Xenox walked at my left, posture straight, face unreadable. On my right side, Nyx and Zephyr stayed close, dressed in simple formal robes, their moon-marked wrists hidden beneath long sleeves. My children kept their heads down, blending into my cloak's shadow. Isaak stood at the head of the hall beside Bethelina. He was tall, stunning and impossibly breathtaking in that dark suit embellished with gold linings tailored just for him. His silver eyes found me the second I entered. Heat crawled beneath my skin. His stare was too sharp, too knowing. I forced my feet forward, ignoring the way my chest tightened, the same way it had earlier when he saw my children. He could not know. He must not know. The banquet began with formal speeches. Alphas pledging unity, envoys discussing treaties, overpriced wine that tasted like burnt herbs. I sat, silent and watchful, every sense aware of Isaac's gaze flickering to me again and again. Bethelina noticed. Of course she did. She leaned close to him, whispering behind a perfect smile. I watched her hand graze his arm, staking her claim. Isaak didn't react. He didn't even look at her. His eyes stayed on me like iron pulled to a magnet. My heartbeat thudded. I kept my mask tilted slightly downward, pretending not to see him watching. When the last toast ended, music swelled. It was a slow, haunting tune plucked from silver-stringed instruments. Wolves stepped back to make space in the center of the hall. Bethelina's smile widened. "And now, the opening dance," she announced sweetly, led by Alpha Isaak of Moonbane and Lady Eris of Ithacus. My stomach crashed against my ribs. I shot Xenox a look. He muttered, "Absolutely not." But refusing an Alpha's summons in front of every pack, it would be a declaration of defiance. I stood slowly, deliberately, letting the room see nothing but the faceless Lady Eris they observed and respected. My cloak whispered around me as I stepped forward. Isaak descended the stairs toward me. His movements were fluid and controlled, but tension radiated off him in waves strong enough to cut through. When he reached me, he held out his gloved hand. "Lady Eris?" His voice was steady, but something restless lived beneath it. I placed my hand in his. Heat shot through the gloves the moment our palms touched, like sparks clawing up my wrist, searing electric. My breath hitched. Isaac's eyes widened just slightly, as if the air had punched out of him. I whispered the words to myself, tightening the disguise herbs beneath my mask. It's the wolfer, I lied softly. It conducts heat. His jaw tightened. That's not wolfer you feel. He led me to the center of the hall. The crowd parted instantly, eager and hungry for drama, like alphas watched with suspicion, envoys watched with curiosity. Bethelina watched with barely concealed venom. Isaak placed one hand at my waist, and I hated the way my body reacted, remembering the shape of him, the weight of him pressed against me. I hated that. I lifted my chin, keeping my voice cool. Try not to step on my feet, Alpha. He huffed a breath, almost a laugh. I think you'd tear my throat out if I did. Correct. The band strummed, and we moved. Isaak led strongly but not forcefully, his touch firm and confident. Every time his hand tightened slightly, I felt the ghost of that night beneath the rain. His breath brushed my ear as he leaned in. You dance like someone trained in a pack. I forced a shrug. Many rogues have complicated histories. His gaze dropped to my masked face. Yours feels familiar. My pulse stumbled. I've never met you, Alpha, I lied smoothly. His steps faltered just slightly, just enough that the wolf in him snarled against whatever restraint he held. You smell. His voice roughened. Like someone I should know. Like someone. I cut him off, voice cold as mountain ice. Do not project your ghosts onto me. He exhaled sharply, the muscles in his jaw flexing. Interesting choice of words. The music lifted, and he spun me. My cloak swirled like a tide around us. The hall watched every movement, some mesmerized, some suspicious. His hand slid down my waist, stabilizing me as the dance required. My heartbeat hitched, his breath did too. Tell me something, he murmured. No. He chuckled low. You don't even know the question. I already don't like it. Are the 2 children with you, yours? Every muscle in my body froze, but I didn't let the tension show. I kept dancing. Yes, I said evenly. His steps slowed. His steps slowed barely, but enough that only standing against him would notice. Who is their father? My teeth clenched behind the mask. That, I said, is none of your concern. The room spun as he guided me through a turn, but his eyes never left my face, those sharp silver eyes hunting for truth in every angle. You protect them fiercely, he said quietly, like a mother with enemies. I have no shortage of enemies. And you brought them here? They insisted. His grip tightened just for a moment, anger or fear or something else entirely. They should not be here. Perhaps you should worry about your own pack, I snapped softly, instead of mine. His jaw locked, his wolf surged. The air between us crackled, prickling along my skin. The music swelled to its final notes, reverberating through the hall. He spun me once more, catching me against his chest, the movement smooth and infuriatingly perfect. Our hearts collided. Literally, his was racing fast. The music ended and I stepped back sharply, severing the moment. Instantly, the hall erupted into loud applause. Isaak stood frozen, breath uneven, silver eyes locked on mine like he was restraining himself not to rip the mask off with sheer will. I bowed shallowly and then I turned. I left the hall, cloak swirling behind me like night swallowing light, leaving behind the whispers and Bethelina's glare burning into my spine. Sierra's puff. The summit hall buzzed like a hornet's nest. Sound swelled against the high ceilings with voices layering over voices, alphas in ceremonial armor moving in territorial clusters, their clashing egos disguised as polite diplomacy. The scent of dominance and tension mixed thickly in the air. I should have felt overwhelmed. Instead, I felt hunted, not openly or obviously, but in the way the air constantly shifted. The way the alphas watched me, a rogue in pack territory. Xenox stood close behind me, posing as my advisor. My children were hidden safely in our assigned quarters, watched by 2 trusted rogues. I could only pray they stayed there. The mask on my face was suffocating, but I needed it. I needed every barrier, every disguise, every breath of ashroot herbs keeping my scent buried beneath layers of smoke and pine. The other alphas were going on about boundaries and territories and alliances when Isaak stepped in. I felt him before I saw him. A pressure in the air, an unwelcome pull in my chest, but I kept my posture steady as another alpha finished rambling about border conflicts, but my wolf growled low inside me. He was getting closer, but I didn't dare turn. The sound of boots across polished stone grew louder. Each step seemed to scrape across my nerves. Then it came. A low inhale. The entire energy of the hall shifted, and my pulse stuttered painfully. Damn it. I kept my gaze locked on the speaker, pretending to listen, pretending my heart wasn't at war inside me. The herbs masked my scent, I was sure they did, but still my pulse raced against my skin. Another inhale and murmurs rose across the hall, wolves sensing an alpha losing control. My fingers curled into my cloak. I couldn't let this unravel. Not here, in front of dozens of alphas who would devour a weakness like fresh meat. A hand touched my arm lightly. "Xenox?" "You're shaking," he murmured under his breath. "Get control." "I am," I said, though the words trembled. No, I wasn't. Not really, because Isaak's presence hit me like a storm front, and when I finally turned, almost against my will, our eyes collided across the hall. His eyes flickered silver instantly, his stare piercing me like a blade of moonlight. I snapped my gaze away, pulse racing. My facade cracked for a split second, an exhale that shook my entire frame. "Alpha Isaak?" someone asked, startled. He ignored them. His head lifted again as he sniffed the air, jaw clenched, eyes narrowed with instinctual hunger. Wolves parted on instinct, letting him through. A terrified part of me whispered, "He knows." But no, he couldn't. He mustn't. If he found out, if he recognized me, then he would discover Nyx and Zephyr, and everything I had built in Ithacus would be dust, because no one would let an Omega rule a territory. Not in peace. Isaac's presence continued to swell across the hall like a wave of dominance. I felt the pressure of it slam into me, rattling my bones. My mask suddenly felt too thin, too flimsy. The urge to flee spiked through my body, but that would give me away instantly. So I stood still, a pillar of dark armor and fragile lies. "Lady Eris, an alpha from Frostvale," said politely, approaching from the side. "We were discussing the river border agreement. Do you have input?" I opened my mouth as I got to my feet, my voice ready to spill out the polished, diplomatic answer I'd practiced, but then Isaac's scent hit me, just the faintest curl of pine and storm rain. My breath caught and my heart clenched so tightly I had to press a hand to my armor. "Lady Eris?" the Frostvale Alpha asked again, confused. "Focus," I told myself. Focus. "He's getting too close," Xenox whispered behind me. "I know," I breathed. Isaac's shadow fell across the table. The Alphas quieted, a ripple of awareness passing through the hall. He wasn't looking at the diplomats or at Bethelina whispering harshly behind him, not even looking at the council. His eyes were on me. "Lady Eris," he said, voice low, but cracking somewhere beneath the surface. The Frostvale Alpha stiffened. "Alpha Isaak? You appear unsettled." "I'm fine," he lied, eyes never leaving my mask. My fingers trembled at my sides. I curled them into fists until the shaking stopped and then lifted my chin slightly. "Alpha," I answered, stepping back slightly. His eyes narrowed as if that tiny movement sliced him. Bethelina snapped. "Alpha Isaak, this is not the time for quiet," he said softly. Her mouth snapped shut in outrage. Around us, wolves watched with fascination at the coiling tension. Isaak inhaled again, Bus' expression shifting as he whispered one word, barely audible, but I heard him. I always hear him. "Seer." I spun on my heel instantly, cutting him off, walking away before the name could fully leave his mouth. Xenox moved beside me immediately, shouldering aside startled envoys as we exited the main circle of alphas. The moment we passed into the side corridor, I exhaled sharply, leaning against the stone wall. Xenox swore. "He scented you." "No," I whispered, heart racing. "He can't know? He can't." "He will." I glared at him. "No." My legs trembled again, raw fear mingling with something much uglier. The memories, the heat, the pain, and the utmost sour taste of the past clawing its way up my throat. Xenox softened slightly. "Sierra? Don't," I snapped. He shut his mouth, jaw clenched. But I wasn't shaking from fear. Not only fear. Seeing Isaak like that, battling his wolf, breath unsteady, eyes desperate, it hit something inside me I didn't want to acknowledge. I tried to bury it, but the truth whispered through the cracks. He still feels it, even now, even after everything. I pressed a hand to my chest, as if I could smother the echo of a bond long thought dead. Xenox touched my shoulder. "What now?" I lifted my mask slightly, just enough to breathe, then lowered it again. "Now," I said, "we stay hidden, and we make damn sure Isaak never gets close enough to finish that word." Deus Sierra's Pav. The morning after the banquet felt like walking into a den of wolves with raw meat tied around my throat. The summit's central courtyard bustled with alphas, envoys, and delegates, each one pretending they weren't sizing the others up like prey. Moonbane's servants poured tea for the elites, and in the distance, you could hear the sharp scraping of metal against metal. Xenox walked one step behind me with an imposing posture and cold gaze, the perfect beta for a woman who supposedly commanded a rogue nation. The silver of my cloak glinted under the morning sun, and my mask hid my face perfectly, leaving only my red-painted lips to be seen. Isaak entered the courtyard from the opposite archway, and the air shifted instantly. His presence rippled outward, and conversations faltered, heads turning to follow his every move. He didn't look at the crowd. He looked at me. I broke eye contact first, turning into a cluster of alphas from the northern packs who had been trying to get me into a conversation of diplomacy, neutrality, and distance. I didn't care for any of it, as long as my people were safe, but I forced myself to play the role I'd crafted. Lady Heiress, drawled Alpha Rowan of Frostvale, his pale hair braided with bone beads. Your reputation is growing faster than the summit's food bill. I tilted my head, voice smooth. Reputation is an unreliable thing. People embellish. Do they? Rowan smirked. Only when necessary. A murmur of approval rippled through the small crowd. Rowan stepped closer, eyes scanning the curve of my armor, the edges of my mask. Moonbane seems especially interested in you. I hadn't noticed. He hummed, unconvinced, that smirk still playing on his lips. Their alpha looked ready to devour you whole last night. My heart skipped, but I let out a light laugh. An alpha's expression is not my concern. Perhaps it should be. Callan, beta of Moonbane and Isaac's right hand, appeared beside us. Of all the wolves here, Callan had the most dangerous eyes. They were too observant, too perceptive. He didn't flirt like Rowan or challenge like the other alphas. Instead, Callan studied, watching and waiting always till you made that one mistake. He bowed politely. Lady Heiress, a pleasure. Beta Callan, I returned, equally polite. Moonbane is gracious with its hospitality. Of course, he said, we're honored to host intriguing guests. And there it was, the probe. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Your scent is remarkably faint. Unique. I've never encountered something quite like it. I kept my breathing even. Our lands have strange herbs. Ah, he said softly. Herbs. A single word, but his tone told me he didn't buy it for a second. Rowan interjected, irritated by Callan's interruption. Don't hover, Moonbane. You're making the lady uncomfortable. On the contrary, Callan said, eyes never leaving me. I believe mystery suits her. My pulse kicked. He leaned in slightly. Tell me, Lady Heiress, have we met before? Your presence feels familiar. I smiled beneath the mask. I assure you, Beta, you'd remember if we had. Rowan barked a laugh. She has you there. But Callan didn't smile. Instead, he stepped closer, murmuring beneath his breath. I'm sure you remind me of someone. I stepped away subtly. Perhaps many rogues resemble the wolves your kind has pushed out. His eyes sharpened. Before the tension got worse, another presence slid into the circle, clothed as silk and cotton, her sweet perfume filling the air. Bethelina. Her smile was honey, but her eyes were venom. Lady Heiress, she said with a polite nod that failed to hide her disdain, you seem to attract attention everywhere you go. Not intentionally, I said. Curious? She tilted her head, gaze flicking between me and Isaak, who still watched from across the courtyard. Alpha Isaak rarely shows such interest. Callan stiffened beside her. Rowan grinned like he lived for drama. Bethelina continued smoothly, You must be quite special. I kept my voice even. I'm simply here to represent Ithacus. She hummed. Of course. A long, uncomfortable silence followed. Attempting to use the pause to escape the tension, I turned away, but then Bethelina stopped me, stepping before me. Her voice dropped dangerously soft. You should know something, Lady Heiress. Isaak is a difficult man, hard to win, harder to keep. Something hot and wild flickered under my ribs, my wolf snarling silently. I have no interest in winning or keeping any alpha, I said. Bethelina's smile didn't reach her eyes. Good. It would be unfortunate if a visiting envoy caused tension. Callan shot her a warning look. Bethelina. But she ignored him, turning away with her gown sweeping dramatically behind her. For someone acting Luna, she carried the role with claws. Rowan snorted. Moonbane politics. I prefer the simplicity of the North. If someone irritates me, I fight them. Tempting, I murmured, smiling at him. Callan's voice dropped again, apologetic. I apologize on her behalf. Bethelina is territorial. Isaak has been changed lately. Rowan grunted. No shit. Callan glanced again at me. I shifted slightly, signaling to Xenox, "Time to move," I murmured. Xenox stepped forward instantly, placing himself between me and the men. "Lady Eris has a session with the mediators." Rowan gave a lazy bow. "Until later, my lady?" Callan bowed again. "We will speak soon. Not if I can help it." The mediator chamber was quieter, but only barely. Scrolls littered the tables. Wolves argued in tense tones over boundaries, hunting rights, and inheritance treaties. I listened, speaking only when necessary. I was good at this, better than I expected. "Lady Eris, your perspective is highly refreshing," Rowan had said with a smirk. "Such strategic insight for a rogue nation." I simply bowed at the commendation. Isaak paced along the far side of the hall, restless and unsettled, scanning every face, but most times they lingered on Rowan's and then on mine. As I turned away instantly, gripping the edge of a table until my pulse calmed. Xenox noticed. "Don't fall apart," he murmured. "I'm not." I inhaled slow, steadying myself. Isaac's beta suspects me. Bethelina hates me. The Alphas want alliances. This is turning into a war without weapons. "A political battlefield," Xenox said. "Exactly. And on political battlefields," he murmured, leaning slightly closer, "the most dangerous wolf is the one everyone watches." My eyes drifted across the hall, to Isaak, who watched me like I held all the answers in the world.